me. Okay, yeah, let's start. Today is the April 20th, 2021, and let's start today's the SIG Node meeting. Let's start with Sergey and Alana update us as the PR status and the backtrack status. Then I noticed that last week there's the two topic is uncovered. Let's move those to the beginning, so give them time and to then we can follow. So Sergey, maybe you want to start?
Yeah, this week there were a lot of cherry picks. We released a few versions and now we're trying to fix them as fast as possible. So yeah, I think most of cherry picks are LGTM'd. Some were already approved. So if approvers can look at other cherry picks, it would be awesome.
Yeah, I noticed there were tons of cherry picks sitting in the triage column, and then we had another urgent one come in yesterday, which I think is good to go. So I don't think that we're going to have another patch release until next month, because the cherry pick deadline for April was a couple weeks ago. So we'll see. But yeah, those are gone through there. Other than that, definitely, I think the PRs are growing right now, but we will get through them.
Thanks. Let's move to the first topic. Francesco, do you want to start to talk about the CPU manager?
Hey, yeah, I prepared a couple of slides. So if you can give me cost, otherwise I will have linked, so it's fine either way.
Yes, I'll give you the host.
Okay, works for me.
Go ahead.
So share my screen, this one. Okay, hopefully you can see my slides. Okay, so thanks. So the work we are like to propose is basically a new policy for CPU manager. And this sparked a lively discussion about how to extend the CPU manager in the first place, but I will get to them in a minute. First of all, I would like to cover what is this new policy is about. This new policy is about allowing a more fine-grained thread placement when the CPU manager selects the CPU, the virtual CPU, to allocate to containers. What we have right now works fine, but for let's say a subset of the workload which enjoys the isolate policy, we need a bit more. The biggest thing we want to avoid is the noisy neighbor scenario, on which a physical core or mid-level cache are shared among different containers. So let me just quickly illustrate the case. Let's consider this very simple case with, let's say, 8 physical CPUs, each of them with 2 virtual CPUs. We allocate with static policy, we allocate a guaranteed quality of service container which requires 5 CPUs. So you get, of course, you get 5 virtual CPUs, but you also get 3 physical cores, one of them being shared because it's partially allocated. So other containers can run there because, you know, other policies are in the shared pool, so everything can run there. You can have noisy neighbors, so you can have latency spike, for example, in latency sensitive application. Worst case, even, well, not really worse, but a different case is if you squeeze all the container, you allocate all the resources in your node, then you will surely have noisy neighbors, because if granted, all the containers need to require odd number of CPUs, but still you will have shared physical core. And this is exactly what we want to avoid. So in this sense, this is an extension of the static policy. So it's an additional guarantee. We believe that the most natural extension is having a new policy because we want to preserve the current guarantee of the static policy. It's unlikely every workload which already is using the static policy could benefit of it. So we propose an extension. Could be a new policy, could be, for example, an extended behavior static policy that pods could be able to opt in, or even a kubelet option, but still should be opt-in this behavior. So how could it look like? The only way to prevent the noisy neighbor is to prevent containers, to workloads to run on the physical on the same physical CPU of a partial if it is partially allocated. So we need to reserve this virtual CPU and somehow and make it unavailable from the shared pool. How do we do that? And why is it a problem? Because, you know, for all intents and purposes, let me actually go back. The workload requests an odd amount of CPUs, because if you have a workload which requires an amount of CPUs, such as every physical core is fully allocated, no big deal, but no issue at all, actually. But if it is not the case, how do we do that? To prevent that, we said we need to over-allocate, let's say, allocate a physical CPUs. So this means that you request, let's say, 5 cores, you get 6 because you need to consume all of them. And this could be an issue because it messes up the resource reporting. So options to fix this. Option to fix this is add an admission handler which enforces the requirement. And this is another reason, by the way, to add them as an external policy. Add an admission plugin to enforce the requirement to reject the admission, much like we do for topology manager already, we've seen already. And if this policy cannot guarantee that the workload cannot cannot get CPUs such as all the physical cores are occupied, reject the workload. There are alternatives for this approach. For example, alternatives we considered, but we consider less CDL than that. Add an external resource, much like, by the way, CPU pooler is doing. But if we have an extended resource to convey the fact you want physical cores, well, first of all, it clashes with the existing resource. You need to specify both. If you don't specify CPU resource, how you can obtain in guaranteed quality of service class, which is a problem, which is a nice property we want to keep. So this not seems ideal. Another option could be maybe let the resource, the CPU resource specify, hey, we want actually a physical core. Being a physical core capable of hosting 2 or more virtual CPUs, we can maybe stretch the definition and consider it a multiple. A physical core could be seen a multiple of virtual cores, but this relationship again is depending on the hardware settings, on the specific of hardwares, and really doesn't feel like a good direction at this moment. But when I started a conversation to get feedback about if this, how the community feels about the noisy neighbor problem, which other, consumers can we see besides the very specific low latency scenarios like telco workloads or even high frequency trading or something like that. The very first question, which is actually the very first question I'm going to raise is, how do we even extend the CPU manager? Because the very first proposal with the very first answer we got was like, hey, let's considering adding external policies and making the CPU manager work much like the external plugins, much like we have for device plugin, but for CPU manager. So this is actually the very first question I believe we should consider in the first place. So we can do, okay, just add a new built-in policy or make changes to the existing policy, or we can have the external policies. We had already, I was told, I was not involved in Kubernetes there. We kind of covered this last week. We had an initial discussion and about having let's say those external policies, but that approach was not really gaining traction last time. So let's consider again. And there were few ideas being proposed, like just add the new API for CPU manager, maybe just use device plugin, extend the device plugin API to be able to extend CPU manager in this case. While working on that, we identified few topics about implementing external plugin, and those are things we hit ourselves while experimenting in this area, and others are things which were raised by the CPU pooler maintainer, which is very close to this. CPU pooler is a device plugin plus external components made by Nokia, which implement something very similar, and I listed that there. For example, who should, how we declare the resource if we move out of tree. How do we still use the core resource? We use an external resource like CPU pooler does. Again, which API we can use and who owns the C groups, who sets them. But again, the very first question I think we should discuss is what's the preferred way going forward to extend CPU manager to enable, for example, the policy we are looking forward to implement, or general policies to be implemented, or it depends on, for example, on the magnitude of the policy. So how do we extend the CPU manager? This is my question, and this is what I wanted to cover. So thanks, everyone. Looking forward to hear comments and to have some guidance.
So Francisco, so we in the past, maybe 4 years ago, we did actually heavily discuss external API to support CPU and even some memory, and also the NUMA. All it is being talked about. If I recall, back why I think that at least that time I tried to push forward on the external API, so that's why we have the device plugin. But there's a lot of concern. Maybe I share here from the community. One, it is, I think you also mentioned that in your slides, when the state owner. Another thing, it is people concerned about the, because it is the CPU and the memory management is the first class we support, and every single workload requires to handle, and they worry about the potential of the latency and also discrepancy, and introduced by this external some daemon site, and also those conflict decisions. So that's why at the end we decided start from the built-in, but we again, we didn't rule out completely of the external daemon side. Like for example, Intel have the NUMA management, a lot of things which basically get that idea, and they have their own external resource management, even collaborate with the built-in CPU and the memory. So yeah, I just share some background context here. So any other one have some comments on this topic?
Well, my comment will be more generic. So if we're talking about extending CPU manager, we cannot do it alone. So if we really fight for the noisy neighbor situation, CPU is not enough. You always need to consider how the memory is connected, what kind of memory is used, what kind of buses are connected, and so on and so forth. So if we really do external APIs, when it means like full resource management or topology manager API, which needs to be taken into account.
Thanks, Alexander. I have just a follow-up question, because I was following, even though not involved as I would like, the efforts, for example, to container device initiative. And my question is, I understand the long-term goal to have all the resource management in some way being modular, external, but maybe it's not the place. But what's the migration path towards path? Because in my opinion, having external policies could be, for CPU manager, could be a nice middle ground step towards that direction. I was under the impression.
It's a nice step, and I fully agree. And actually, Christian, who is probably also on this call, he was participating in that early discussion a few years ago when this was proposed the first time. One of the problems, what I recall from this past year's discussion for external APIs, was about maintenance of those APIs. Meaning what? If we create a new endpoint with new plugin mechanism, it will be some people who will start to use it. And then it will be the question of how we graduate, how we deprecate it in the future. So it was one of those roadblocks to external APIs. And then it was also complexity of what happens if resource plugin will be crashing, what Kubernetes should do in that scenario. So yes, potentially it can enable some of the use cases right now, but I mean, like if we do just APIs for CPU manager right now, it means what in very near term we will need to revisit them because of the memory, because of devices and overall alignment of resources.
I agree with you. I agree with you that we'll need changes, but I guess my question boils down, okay, now we are in a state on which the resource manager, except for device manager, obviously are all built in. And in the long term, we pretty much all agree, I understand that we will have node resource is in a modular fashion, but my question was just, okay, I get that CPU manager external policy could cause issue in this case, but granted that, how would the transition look like if doing modular, doing small changes, let's say, starting for CPU manager, for example, and then maybe extending for memory manager, is not the ideal direction. How we bridge the far-term future with the current state.
So Francesca, kind of question, if it's okay. Have you prototyped this? Like it doesn't seem that different from the existing static policy, other than it's hyper-thread aware. And I imagine the code looks remarkably similar.
Yes, we do have a prototype. Yes, we are in the process of testing that. But the reason why asking in the first place was what Kevin actually said. Okay, first answer from him was, hey, let's evaluate again the external policy. So I will actually ask the as much as I can the community, you see.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I understand. I guess what I'm wondering is like asking external policy for just one compute resource when we have work in flight to do memory and NUMA alignment and device stuff.
Well,
seems maybe not the right question.
No, about just adding a new policy, I'm of course fine with that. If we can send the PR in few days for evaluation, of course, to see, for people to see how we look like, and maybe postpone this conversation. But I felt it was worth, asking.
I agree. It's worth asking, and it's agreed. It's worth to discuss the possibilities.
I agree with Alexandra earlier. I just want to say the okay. So I agree with Alexandra. So because when we talk about external resource API, this is what we have in the past. Also, we paused that decision. The reason it is use cases back then. Use cases we don't have those rich use cases, right? Customer user having to get to today's stage, right? Obviously, today's stage we predict will be get here, but we know that then back then Kubernetes adoption is not that high yet. So we haven't have those real-time use cases, and even like the typology a while use cases, loyalty, neighborhood use case, customer user haven't get to that stage yet. So at the same time, we also realize one thing, which is exactly Alexandra mentioned earlier here, because they have the background from the Intel. And we also have the background from the Borg, and the Red Hat also have the OpenShift have the background in the past. So we know there's the have to those resources, several resources have to working together to provide to meet the customer requirement. But to settle down with that resource, all three type of the resource, even there's some disk related stuff, and it is a hard decision for us at that. So here, what you propose, still it is the CPU. So if we go with the external API, that's the constant maintenance people concern. It's not like the, okay, we cannot maintain. And it is once you only focus on the CPU, and then a lot of vendor maybe just go implement their own, and based on that API. And it's really hard for us if we have to reverse API. If you saw that CLI, container runtime interface today, even that's really wild guided, wild grouped, and API, it is cause problem. Same thing for like today's the CSI storage API, like every time there's the production, and if you're using different vendors, implementation of the CSI actually run into tons of the problem. This is why in the past we be cautious and concerned. So that's why Alexandra, once you mention some extra API, needs to start talk about the CPU memory and the NUMA. So that's why that came from. Just share from here.
Okay, so I works for me, and I really felt it was the first question to ask, and I got a good answer. I think I would just like to wrap up, and my takeaways are: it seems we still prefer to have built-in policy and evaluate if the actual policy we would like to propose could fit. So I think we will just post the PR to let people review and make comments, and polish the cap, which we already almost done, so people can review. And regarding the external policies, Kevin seems to have some ideas, so I will just reach with him, and in parallel, let's see, work with him to see how we could look like. But for the real deal, which is the policy we would like to do, we'll just keep with built-in. Does it seem fair to everyone there?
Francesca, I also want to participate in the discussion, and I think other people from our side as well. But in reality, like for a question for external policies for CPU manager, I would still try to suggest to rephrase it as a external policies for topology manager. So practically, the API, what we really need is to have external policy which takes information about what kind of workload is planning to be started and what kind of all the kubelet managed resources available on the system, and when it can reply with assignment of resources. Would it be CPU, memory, devices, or whatever else? So practically, make the topology manager policies external, when it will cover all the possible resources. And that's like something that can be like future proof.
This is a good point. So I'll just talk with Kevin in the public channel. So I'll just make sure to tag you, and you can add the tags for be part of the conversation. So okay, point taken.
Just before we wrap up, Francesca, I just want to mention that I think prototype came into discussion. We do have a prototype. Maybe next week we can come and show a demo. We have it already working, and even the implementation is pretty much complete. So it might give people more clarity as to what we are proposing, and it might help with the reviews as well.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
I guess my last thought on this is, like, we have existing policies that when we look to externalize things, we could already, to your point on like how do you transition from present state to future state, like we could evaluate any externalization approach against like the present state. But I just want to make sure that like this isn't the only use case that would allow us to iterate and evolve, and I wasn't sure if that was understood. I more look at this and just ask, was it an error when we did the static policy that we didn't ask, is it hyper-thread aware or not? And is it an error that when we defined the policy flag that we only did it with one flag, which was static, none or whatever, and we didn't provide a secondary flag which would say like something more nuanced, like hyper-thread aware or some opaque string or something. So I don't know. That's kind of how I was looking at this right now, but I look forward to seeing the PR.
Yeah,
okay.
like one comment I have on that is, given that CPU manager, it does a best effort job first allocating on the basis of sockets and then tries to get cores and then kind of remaining threads. It was kind of the decision that was made that it would do the best effort job, but in scenarios that it's not able to do, it wouldn't fail. Whereas here, what we are trying to emphasize is that if the request cannot be fulfilled from a single core, it ends up in an error.
Yeah, which to me is similar to the topology constraints, right? Where
Exactly,
we say it must
yeah.
fit or it's best effort. And basically, should we have a policy knob on CPU manager that we didn't have in mind that would let us express this without having to feel like we need to get all externalization perfect is my thought. Like we can learn as we go. It seems like we would want maybe two pieces of information where we have one now, but anyway.
Yeah. And one more thing, like even in the implementation, what we are doing is we're not exactly copying what static policy already does. We are trying to reuse static and add essentially an admit handler with the additional check that we care about. So it's not replacing the entire or just entirely replicating static and making a minor change. So implementation wise, we've kept that in mind. But again, I think with the demo and kept kind of polished a bit more, it would become clearer and we can follow up next week on this.
That's great. Needs to follow up next week on this one. So yeah.
Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Francisco, and to this one. So let's move to next topic. So we can follow up next week on this even more detail with the demo, with the Sweaty and Alexandra and Francisco. So next one, there's another from Carrie from the April 13. But so Atul, do you want to talk about this one? Extended pod resource API with the memory management metrics.
Yeah, hi folks. So in general, part of promotion of the memory manager to beta, Derek requested to provide some kind of metrics. And I believe the best way is just to provide such metrics under the pod resources API, because we already have the endpoint and we already provide some CPU metrics under it regarding the node, regarding the pod and container. So my main questions, should I provide a new cap for such kind of extension, and should I provide a new feature gate?
I don't think we need a new feature gate. I would just edit the existing cap.
Okay, so no need for new cap and no need for the feature gate, right? Just to be sure that I understand.
Right. I think just so my feature gate memory is strong, it's still an alpha, right?
Sorry?
The feature we're discussing is still an alpha.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's perfectly fine to
okay.
Extend the existing.
Okay, great. Thank you, folks. So I got all answers that I wanted, and I will provide the pull request soon. Thank you.
Thanks. Next, move to our regular agenda. Manu, do you want to talk about the cap for this release?
Yeah, sure. So I think last week we went through a first round of planning. We talked about all the features in the document. And then one thing we wanted to do is kind of prioritize all of them. So I was thinking maybe we can quickly go to the list and attach like a high, medium, low to that list as a group. So we know like what we want to focus on first, and we know what we can drop if we don't have enough bandwidth.
There's also some t-shirt sizing on there as well. So I started attaching sizes to things, but I think that like we probably need both for accurate prioritization.
Yeah, exactly. So I added like priority size, so we can do small, medium, large, or something like that. That works. Yep. Can you give me co-host so I can share my?
I already gave to you.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the first one is CRI graduation priority maybe high. What do folks think? Like, we may still my concern is we are still finding things we keep on adding to the list. We need to add to CRI. So
I'm +1 on the high point. I think it just clarifies direction, I guess.
Okay, high. And in terms of effort, probably medium if we talk about those two items. Okay. Node graceful shutdown.
We're not doing that one this release, so I put NA. We're GAing it next release.
Yeah, but I think we still want to target adding some phases for shutdown based on priority class, if possible during this release. So David, I'm not sure from your perspective how high that is, but like I think it would be a medium for us.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Let's do that.
And sizing, I'm not sure, like whether it's a small to a medium. Maybe we can call it a medium and then see how
it shouldn't require going through, like if we're not graduating to the next phase, it won't require going through all of the approvals and planning and whatnot for KEPs, which is why I stuck that as NA. Like people can continue to work on things. I think that's separate.
So I think like we need to clarify, right? Like from a priority perspective, we are talking priority for not just stuff that is graduating, but also in terms of bandwidth will assign to work that's ongoing, like C groups V2 when CRI graduation is high, it may not make it. So I don't know, like Derek, Don, what's your perspective? Like, do we want to only talk about things that we want to change the level of, or also ongoing work?
Actually, you can call it beta 2, and this will define a new target.
Yeah, that's an option.
Adding priority class will likely change configuration parameters we'll have. So maybe beta 2 is a good alternative.
I'm confused, Bernal. What was the question specifically?
No, so for this one, like what we said was like, we'll stay beta, but we'll add more features here, like on the value of the priority class. So what do we want to do? Like, do we also want to give a priority to everything based on things that level is not going to change, but we're still going to work on it, or no? And then Sergey suggested we could do a beta 2, which doesn't sound bad to me.
But there isn't really like a new resource API for this, right? This is...
We'll end up having some configuration to the kubelet to expose like more priority class values.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should track it also because it's like an API change, and you need to get feedback from folks and that type of thing. So, like a follow-up beta, I think does make sense to track.
I would just label it as a new feature, like priority class aware graceful shutdown, and like get the existing one as we knew it working.
So Derek, should we have a new gate then, or?
I don't see any issue with having a new gate, right? It's easier to manage than it's in my view probably easier to manage.
Okay. I guess like in the interest of time, David, like we can take it offline and figure out.
All right.
Yeah. So C groups V2, we want to target an alpha, and like I think like probably medium to a high from our perspective. Like folks on the call have any input on that?
what mean high or what mean medium? Medium highs mean like the okay, if we want to meet our target. So if we couldn't do it, then we will shift some engineering resource to make sure finish this one.
Yeah,
otherwise that high is a little bit is like the cases like, for example, CRI graduation. It is, I know open source is hard to shift engineering resource to do something, but at least that's kind of indicate our intention, right? So I'm not sure for this one. So are we going to say, oh, pause some other work and just to make sure we have alpha for this one?
Like maybe just an order of like just ordering this list. Right now, this list is unordered, Don. Like in our planning, we also have like a blocker thing that we do, which means that we won't absolutely ship without this. But like as you said, at open source is going to be hard, right? We can't like
I think
guarantee resources.
I basically view this like medium, high, or whatever as like a time for us across the community to kind of express our interest in the shared outcome, right? And obviously some things that folks have higher interest in than others individually, but I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, on this list was just like a grab bag from a wide variety of areas, and maybe it's not people's immediate interest right now versus 6 months from now, that type of thing. And so I would say like anything we label medium means like people are present to do it now, and anything we label high means people are really present to do it. And anything that's low would be like, I might not be here at the cadence you desire, type of thing.
Yeah, from my perspective, I would read low as things that are safe to drop from the release, medium as things that I'm going to rely on the owners to drive, and high as things that we as a SIG have decided on, and like therefore I should, if I see it like lagging, jump in to try to help. I don't know if we have anything that could be considered a blocker for this release, but if, for example, we had say like a bunch of things that all relied on one particular KEP, then we could consider, and like that KEP had to land, we could consider that too. That's how I would interpret
I think blockers would be things like a feature gate. We have to do it because it's gonna like, we are hitting the time limit. So we have to graduate, maybe. I don't know. Probably would fall in that category.
Yeah, all makes sense.
Okay. All right. I mean, we can try this. I mean, this is the first time.
Exactly. And we also can always adjust, even we propose things and based on the user demand, right? So community demands.
So the next one is memory QoS for C groups V2. I think like from what we said earlier, like the author is interested in present. So should we put this in the medium bracket, but we still need to get the KEP merged. So this would be like definitely not high, like a low to medium, depending on what folks think.
I would go with the lowest possible priority you think is reasonable, because otherwise everything's going to be high.
So we have, I mean, so I think we have at least, I think user namespaces will be low for sure because we don't have the bandwidth there. So any thoughts on this one? Is this Tim on the call?
I know I've been reviewing this one and chatting with the author about it. I mean, they're definitely like pretty active and.
Yeah, he's pretty active, and like looks like the changes won't be a lot. Like main thing is getting agreement on what we're gonna do in alpha.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you can lump it under the existing C group V2 kind of as like a side thing.
Maybe we put it medium for now, and then we see how it goes. Like next time, learning.
Yeah.
Okay. So user namespaces like Michael Toffin attended last time, and it looks like no one really has the bandwidth to work on it. So like unless folks feel somehow accommodate it or move resources from their respective companies, if they're interested in moving this forward, I think it will be low.
thought many people, many customers really interested on this one, at least for our perspective, like Kubernetes for secure perspective. We really, if from the demanding, I thought this is high, but unfortunately, we always don't have more resources.
Yeah. So
That's kind of weird.
Yeah, I think Don.
This is an odd one. Can we just mark it down as needs resource?
Well, it's really hard. Like as Don knows, we got really close to do something like this 2 years ago.
I know.
It had a PR that ultimately couldn't load because it had too many comments in the most final end stage review. To me,
Yes.
that fell over because there was some stuff related to storage we didn't get fully.
Well, there was also some dependencies, some other dependencies that were missing, right?
Yeah.
But now that we've got a lot of the Akiro's user namespace stuff en route done, we should be able to tackle it now. I don't know.
Okay, and I also I will take this also to Google and ask, is there any people besides the Michael Tofen, because I know Michael also busy, so yeah. Okay. But this is really high priority, I think, for the community. People ask, many customers ask.
Okay, Don, I'll just tag you here if we can find folks. And
sure.
Maybe we can ask Phil.
Yeah, if Phil can help. Yeah.
I guess we can. Has anyone gone to SIG storage and had a discussion with them though?
I think Michael was gonna do that. Like I can check with him. If he hasn't, I'll send out a feeler.
Okay.
So Ilana, so the liveness probe timeout.
I would not rate that higher than medium, but I'm planning on getting it done.
Okay, and the sizing would be?
That's small.
Small. Okay, great. So next one is ephemeral containers.
I think we are going to this one. We'll stay in the alpha, but we'll have the more enhancement because he changed API. So we'll be mediums and small, relatively small, I believe. So yeah, but just stay on the alpha. Yeah.
Okay. Swap. Medium, maybe medium and small, or medium and medium.
I put large on there when I t-shirt sized it, just because there's so much alignment to get. But yeah, the implementation itself might not actually be that large. And I've been treating it like it's high priority, but I am fine with you marking it as medium.
Okay. I'll put medium, Ilana. If
yeah, that sounds good.
That is not right. Yes, yeah, let me know. So seccom by default. Sorry, anyone want to say something? Right. So I think this one also I'll put in the medium bracket. If folks feel that we don't have enough bandwidth, I'm happy to say make this a low and do it as a best effort thing. If we feel like we have pulled in too many things and we still have a few more to go on. So maybe we revisit this one and go through the other items.
Yeah, if we have a lot more stuff, I would suggest just marking it as low, and then we'll see.
Mark, are you here? What's the goal for the Windows privilege container? Since we jump.
So I think Don, last week he said we're going to target alpha and things are lined up. So
okay, so we do want to this one, right? At least I think and this has been Windows container is without the privilege container support. I think about it is not really usable for many users, right?
Maybe make it high. I don't know how much effort is remaining. Maybe.
Yeah, they have to put Microsoft and also SIG Windows have to put there. So maybe we put high and ask them. Okay. If it's possible. Oh, Jeremy is here. Jeremy also work on the SIG Windows. Jeremy, do you want to comment on this one? Do you know the status on this one?
Sorry, I wasn't actually following along. I just stepped back in.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah,
I mean, Hostport PR is almost ready. It was almost ready before previous release, and now it's like, I think it's about to be merged.
So maybe it's just a small effort remaining then, Sergey, or we just want to put medium anyways?
Let's put medium because there's the test related, the configuration related. There's some other thing is unknown. Last time we just rushed to merge, and so that's why we punt something. And also Nanta into this meeting, I guess. So maybe there's more detail.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So memory manager, we just talked about this, at least part of it, the metric stuff with Artyom earlier. So
yeah, I think it will be something like medium because like you can see under the init container handling for the memory manager it already, I believe around 1,000 of lines because of mostly unit tests, but again, it's like I believe it will be medium.
Okay. That's good. And Sergey, what about pod overhead?
Yeah, it's a small effort, but the problem is that to G8, I really want to have to find usage, a real production usage, and we didn't find any yet.
So yeah, I gave you the information about where we are at, and we'll be going to production soon. So, but I'm not sure whether that's going to be in time for 4.9.
Yeah, I feel that many people are in this situation right now.
Right.
But I mean, from a no infinite beta policy, we already missed the deadline. The deadline was in the previous release for pod overhead feature. I don't see much harm in keeping it for beta, and I don't think we need to remove that feature. So, if no concerns, let's keep it. And if you find a real production issue, we can just graduate it.
Okay, all right. So like right now we are just in a wait and watch mode and not gonna do anything, right? Then,
yep.
Okay, I'll just put NA here. Okay, so next one is kubelet credential providers. Is Andrew on the call?
Yeah, I don't know if Andrew's here, but I think if I was to reflect what is there, I think the work is probably high because this was a blocker to doing cloud provider externalization.
Yep.
Okay.
And the effort is pretty low.
Yeah. So put my name for it, Mrinal, please.
Okay, sure. So where do you want to be added, DIMS, in the reviewer approver side? Or
yeah, I had been working this with Andrew. I just want to make sure that, I don't know, DIMS, if you're going to help.
Yeah, I might pick up the work from
Andrew.
Andrew.
Okay, all right, awesome. Okay.
Not as an approver.
Okay.
Much of the work was in the last release where Jordan and I were learning that the kubelet had behaviors we never knew it had.
Yeah, I know. I might delegate it to Aditi or somebody, but please put my name for now as the one doing the work.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks, DIMS.
Thank you.
Thanks, DIMS.
All right. Node service log viewer. I think Mark spoke to it last time.
This is probably a medium and a small.
So Docker shim review, like we're just gonna continue as is.
Yeah.
C advisor less CRI full stats. Like Don, David, Peter, and I met last week when we had some discussions. Like maybe David and Don can talk to like what priority Want to give it a medium or a high? Like,
David, do you want to comment on this one?
Yeah, I mean, my comment. I mean, I do think we made some progress here. There's still definitely some open questions and work left to do. So, yeah, I think medium is appropriate. I mean,
okay,
we're definitely
and the effort is probably extra large, I guess.
Yeah, it is definitely large.
Yeah. So the next one, huge page storage, medium size, sized as excess, and
I think that one should be high because that's a thing that's been in perma beta.
Okay.
And it's like super small. The PR is up, so.
Okay. All right. Sergey, next one is yours, dynamic kubelet configuration deprecation.
Yeah, let's mark it high because the work is to mark it deprecated. So.
Okay. And the effort will be?
Smallish. I mean, minimal work is small to mark it deprecated, but there is a follow-up work to not use it in tests that maybe a little bit bigger, but overall small.
Okay, thanks. And so the next one is the in-place VPN. This is the one, Derek, that triggered your comment on having priority. So I'm assuming it should be high.
Yeah, I agree. High, large.
Yeah. High
if it's
large.
not large, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
So new CPU manager policy.
Yeah. So hey, from t-shirt sides, it's smallish because the code that was checking right now is 1,000 line of code, 80% tests. So it really is in S. And effort-wise, if we think about, well, priority-wise, sorry, for us, we have use cases, so I'd say high. It's important for us. It's self-contained, so.
Any objections to marking it high?
Or medium.
I guess we are biased, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I am biased.
I'm asking for feedback from others.
I suspect, given how many things we have high on here, we probably shouldn't mark this one as high.
Fair enough. Yes, that's fair. That's fair. But I have a follow-up question though, regarding the 1, 2, 3, 4th column alpha. Its CPU manager is stable. This is a new policy, so how it should look like? I mean, alpha.
So if it's a new KEP that you're targeting the alpha in this release, that column should say alpha.
Okay, fair enough. Fine.
Yeah. So can we go back to the in-place VPA one? We don't have, we got through the KEP reviews and that was a good team effort. Are we sure, does anyone know if Vinay's here, Don, if he's available to do the implementation or who would be available for review?
Last time I talked to Vinay, and I believe he is available for the implementation, but that's like a couple weeks ago, so I'm not sure, things might change. But if he is okay to do this one, I also can be part of the reviewer, but I don't know. I cannot commit.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to confirm, like, I feel like you and I could pair up on that one fine. I wasn't sure if he was available to post.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also my concern, because last time I did ask him, I said, okay, if you tell how much your bandwidth will invest on this one, he think about this quota, he should, yeah.
And then is there anybody actually on the VPA side and SIG autoscaling that is using it in that window of time, or is it, I'm wondering if there's another person from that SIG that we can engage with, so it's just not Vinay in our mental minds. I guess we can, maybe that's the question we could ask Vinay.
So for the new CPU manager policy, we also need a reviewer, and things it's also medium, it's not high, but maybe we should engage.
Yeah, I will surely talk with Kevin. And if there are other CPU manager reviewers, I will check. But yeah, I will ask him and see if it's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
With maybe a question mark next to it because he didn't agree to. Like,
Okay.
Yeah.
From
And
our
also,
side, myself and Christian, we can also help with reviewing new policy.
Thanks.
Totally. Yeah. And also, I remember in the past, the SES also reviewed tons of the resource management related.
Yeah, Seth as well. I don't know if Seth's on the call, but honestly, Kevin is amazing here. So actually, if he is able to review, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Just a quick time check. I think we've only got a couple of minutes left. So do we want to try to get through the rest of the list? I think we only have a few things.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So the SQDN thing, are we hitting the limit? I didn't check. Like, do we have to graduate it? Then we can mark it high.
I think that one is not a perma beta risk, so I don't think it needs to be high priority.
Okay, let's put it medium and small. Then we can revisit need. So I know Akihiro joined the call, but we ran out of time.
Hey.
Hey, Akihiro.
So how will.
Should I explain about this? Now, could you open the meeting note document?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's some explanation about rootless mode. Rootless mode means running container runtimes such as Kubernetes, container D, and runc or cryo as a non-root user on the host for security purpose. This is somewhat similar to the cap of user namespace, but it's different. So the user namespace proposal is for just running containers as a non-root user. But on the other hand, rootless mode means running everything, including Kubernetes, container D, and runc, as well as containers as a non-root user. So it's different from the user namespace proposal, and they do not conflict. And actually, the patch set is very, very small because almost all stuff is handled by rootless kit. It's a toolkit used by both Docker and Patman. And the container D and runc already supports rootless mode. So the patch on the Kubernetes is really, really small. So the Kubernetes needs to be patched to ignore some errors during setting sysctl calls. And we also need to ignore errors during setting our limit values. So the changes on Kubernetes, it's very small, just a few lines of the code. And actually, Kubernetes in Docker already supports rootless mode without patching Kubernetes. But the kind has some ugly code for faking /proc/sys with bind mount. So the code is not beautiful. So I'd like the patches to be merged for better robustness and simplicity.
Yeah, so I just, one question I had, Kiro, was as a goal, I wanted to make sure that like the kubelet was always set up to be able to pass conformance. I know in earlier iterations on the KEP, I had asked if we felt that running rootless would actually require us to change how we evaluate conformance tests. I think in a past comment, you noted that NFS and block and other storage tests might prove problematic. The note you had on syscontrols, given that I know syscontrols just got promoted to conformance in their last release, kind of gives me a similar pause. So I guess what I was wondering was, if we proceed on this work, how do you guide us to ensure that we can be conformant with that work?
I think we can use Sonoboy. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce, but there is, there's almost test suite. And so I think we need to skip tests related to sysctl and anyways, but other tests should work. And we can use kind for testing rootless mode. So we use rootless Docker or rootless Postman as the provider of kind, and we can run kind for running most of conformance tests. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is the thing that I think is like an unclear cost. So like when we size this, I think we need to make sure that we have those testing things called out. And I wasn't sure, Dims, if you wanted to approach this from the perspective of like a different conformance profile. You know, I think about earlier conversations we had where I think Jack came forward to the SIG and was like, I want to change the visibility of mount propagation points. And we had a lot of back and forth on, well, could you do that or could you not do that? This is like a much bigger
right
visibility change. And so I just wanted to have a framing for it. I don't.
Yeah, Derek, the conformance is when we go from beta to GA. So we can get to alpha and prove out the concept and see what breaks, right? And that'll give us a good set of things to like worry about to see if we can even move to beta from alpha.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that we understood that.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
And then the last question I had was, I thought this is still, resource management was turned off when this was enabled.
So we need to use C group version 2. And with C group version 2, it supports rootless mode. So we can enable resource limitations using C groups.
So from like a prioritization standpoint, is it fair to say we'd want to prioritize this equal to C group suite 2? Or do people have use cases where they don't desire resource management, or would resource management not be a blocker to beta of this feature? Like to me, I don't think we can pass conformance tests rootless until at minimum we had C group suite 2.
Yeah, so yeah, for performance tests, we need to have C group version 2 tests first. Okay.
Yeah, the way I see it, Derek, is anything that this depends on has to be at the same level or higher, right? If this depends on something else, that has to be either alpha or beta, because this is going to alpha, right?
Yeah.
So
just from that regard, I was wondering, like, do we want to give this a high versus the C group suite 2 work a medium or vice versa? But yeah, I was just trying to say, like, it should have equivalent priority as its prereqs.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
So you want to call this a medium then, Derek? Like C group suite 2, we put it as medium, but like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the type of input we all desire, right? So I just want to make sure that we weren't putting this on a path beyond alpha that didn't include like conformance and other things being met. So
in terms of effort, like, okay, I think that pull request itself is small, but like conformance and all the other things will probably make the effort bigger, right? So maybe a large or a medium, I'm not sure.
I think the main thing here is like there's only a narrow path that will work, and there is a lot of dependencies there. So large seems fine.
Okay.
At least we need to write it up and document it, saying if you want this, then here is like the 10 things that you need to do before you switch it on, right?
All right. On the reviewer side, like I know like Giuseppe has been looking at some of it, so I'll check with him if he has the bandwidth. Like, did you have anyone else in mind, Akihiro? Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a further comment, but if you have questions about rootless mode, I can answer.
Okay, sure. So the next one is Mike Brown, ensure secret pulled images. Mike, I think you need to talk about this a bit.
Yeah, it's coded up for the most part. There was one review request for an additional minor sub feature, and I put a demo of what we could code in there. Could use a little help on the test buckets or whatnot at integration level.
Could
the unit buckets are all there.
Could you give a brief summary of what this does, Mike? Just for
yeah. So the idea is that, you know, in the secure by default context, you would think that when pod A pulls an image that required a secret to get, that pod B would not be able to use that image if pod B didn't have that secret, right? But unfortunately, we're in a current situation where you can configure where pod B will use, you know, never pull or, you know, use the image that's already on there. So we need to keep some state in kubelet after we've done the garbage collection, so that we'll know that when we pull an image using a secret, that we won't allow some other pod to use that particular image without checking first if their authentication can pull it, or that they have the secret that matches.
Hey folks, we're like 8 minutes over time, so could we, I think we're just trying to get through these last two. Do we have just a like 2-line estimate of priority and size for these things so we can finish for today?
I would recommend medium in size, medium.
Seems great.
And Aditi is helping Mike too, right?
Yep.
Do we have reviewers, and we can do it offline if you want.
Yeah, let's do that offline.
Yeah.
Last
He's doing a review. Yeah.
So our timeout to pod lifecycle action. So this just came in.
Yeah, this is very new. I would say let's put this
Let's
one as
defer
low
it.
because the cap is not fleshed out yet.
Right. And I think, okay, the last one is already.
Yeah, because I don't know how much work it is. Yeah, the last one is avoiding perma beta. So I'd say that's high and it's very small.
All right. I think we are done. Thank you.
Yay.
Woohoo! Now we can watch the Apple event.
Good job, Elana.
Thanks, everyone.
Brunal.
Thanks, folks. Thanks for joining. Bye.
Thank you, folks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.